I think the best thing for people in Hollywood that are entrenched in that world is to shut the fuck up. Because as soon as they start talking, people as soon as Robert De Niro starts talking, I'm like, Jesus, get that fucking microphone away from him so I can enjoy Taxi Driver.
Robert De Niro has gone so hard partisan over the past 8 years. He is like example number one of Trump derangement syndrome. He's one of those, I'm moving to Canada if he wins, and he's never going to leave the White House if he wins. We're going to have Trump forevermore. I mean, hello, I hate to break it to you because I realize you're advanced age too, Robert, but people die. So he will leave. One way or the other, he's going to go.
What happens when an absolute icon, a legend who defined toughness and grit on screen, seems to lose the plot? We're talking about Robert De Niro, the man who gave us Travis Bickle, Jake LaMotta, and Jimmy Conway, a titan of cinema. But lately, his most dramatic performances haven't been on the silver screen. They've been delivered on red carpets, at awards shows, and just recently, standing outside a courtroom, delivering political rants that left the internet collectively scratching its head. It's a spectacle that feels less like method acting and more like a public meltdown, trading gravitas for grievance. And what makes it truly fascinating, almost bizarre, is how two of the most unexpected voices in media, from wildly different corners, both decided to weigh in without even naming names. The result? A legendary actor becoming a punchline, perhaps without even realizing it.
Yeah. Like, you didn't think this through. Like, this is, and he's getting yelled at. He's doing an outside press conference. Like, Robert, you're 80 years old. Don't ruin this thing. You've had this life where you were a fucking raging bull. You know, you were in The Godfather. Like, stop doing this. Man. Don't do this.
I'm terrified to meet some of those people I looked up to now.
You should be.
I mean, like,
I've met a few of them, and it's actors in particular, because their whole business is pretend. Their whole business is pretend.
Just recently, something bizarre happened. While a high-profile trial was underway, Robert De Niro showed up outside. Not for a film premiere, not for a charity gala. He was there to deliver a political speech. And it wasn't a measured statement. It was a fiery, animated performance, complete with furious gesturing, yelling at hecklers, and a level of intensity that felt out of place. Imagine the guy from Raging Bull, but instead of punching a bag, he's punching the air about politics. It was the latest in a string of increasingly dramatic public appearances where De Niro has lambasted his political opponents, leading many who grew up idolizing him to ask, what happened? How did the quiet intensity of Vito Corleone Jr. or the simmering rage of Jake LaMotta morph into this? For fans who just want to enjoy Goodfellas or Casino, it's become increasingly difficult to separate the art from the artist's very loud, very public, and increasingly irate political persona. He's gone so hard down one political road over the past 8 years, he's become example number one of a certain kind of celebrity derangement syndrome. He's the guy who talks about moving to Canada if things don't go his way, or predicting the end of democracy as we know it. It's a dramatic turn that leaves many wondering if he's trapped in a political echo chamber, mistaking his Hollywood bubble for the real world. He seems genuinely terrified, seeing threats everywhere, predicting doom if his preferred candidate isn't in power forever. It's a performance that's less Oscar-worthy and more exhausting. Like watching a dramatic method actor stuck in a never-ending, increasingly repetitive scene they can't get out of. You just want to yell, Robert, you're 80 years old. You've had this incredible life. Played these iconic roles. Stop, don't ruin this. The desire to enjoy his incredible body of work clashes violently with the discomfort of watching these public spectacles.
And decided to critique the script with a sledgehammer.
To the people shouting him down like, your movies suck. That's not true.
No, his movies are very good.
Suck. He's one of the greatest actors. I mean, he's the heir apparent to Brando, blah, blah, blah. But he's a loon.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to just say what he is. He has, basically, I describe this to people. You know what's happening now? Because people are aware about concussions and the problems with CTE. When you get hit and you get a dinger in football, they put you in the blue tent, in the sideline.
Yeah.
That's what needs to happen to Democrats. They need to go in the blue tent for a little bit, kind of, get your eyes checked and then come out and be rational again.
Yeah, cool off
and
a
De
little.
Niro needs to go in the blue tent. I mean, because it's not calming things down. We need to be rational.
But while De Niro was busy having his on-stage, or rather off-stage, Shakespearean breakdown, two completely different voices across the media landscape noticed. And their observations were brutal, albeit delivered in vastly different styles. First, the podcast king himself, Joe Rogan. Rogan wasn't there outside the courthouse. He wasn't on the red carpet. He was doing what he does best, observing human behavior from his microphone fortress and offering commentary with a casual, often hilarious lack of filter. While discussing how some actors confuse their profession with political expertise, Rogan painted a picture that, for many, felt like a direct, though unnamed jab at De Niro. He spoke about actors whose whole business is pretend, who seem to lose their grasp on reality, becoming surrounded by phonies in the Hollywood bubble. Rogan used a blunt, memorable analogy, likening these figures to football players who've taken a hit to the head and need to go into the blue tent on the sideline to get checked out and become rational again. He suggested certain political figures, and yes, certain aging actors, need to go into that blue tent for a while. It was a classic Rogan move, seemingly casual, yet deeply cutting, pointing out the absurdity of spending 3 decades pretending to be characters named Vinny or Frankie, and suddenly thinking you're qualified to lecture the entire electorate about democracy or foreign policy. It's like a barista lecturing NASA on orbital mechanics because they once stirred coffee with precision. Rogan, with his trademark blend of amusement and incredulity, effectively dismantled the idea that being famous automatically makes your political opinions sound. He mocked the sheer delusion of it all with the subtlety of a UFC knockout, leaving the target, unnamed as he was, metaphorically folded like hotel laundry on live TV.
Oh, Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
Now, Kurt's convinced that Robert De Niro's on some kind of Epstein list or some kind of thing like that, and then he's afraid that if Trump does get power, he's going to expose him, and he is actually going to come at him.
Of course Kurt thinks that.
That's what Kurt thinks that.
Kurt thinks that about every fucking thing that happens in the world.
I think Robert De Niro's just got Trump derangement syndrome.
I think he's old, too. There's a thing about old men.
And
they want to yell at everybody.
And he's completely... Did you see when he went and gave that speech outside of the trial? That was bizarre.
Who told him that was a good idea?
And then he started...
But on Rogan's show, there was a far wilder theory floated by a guest, Kurt. This is where the speculation dives into darker, more controversial territory. Kurt apparently is convinced that Robert De Niro is on some kind of list. Specifically, he mentioned an Epstein list, and that his intense political opposition to certain figures is driven by a fear of exposure if those figures gain power and decide to come at him. It's a shocking accusation, a rumor that, if true, would completely change the narrative from political conviction to desperate self-preservation. Now, Rogan himself immediately pushed back on this specific, explosive speculation. He dismissed it as Kurt's typical conspiratorial thinking, saying Kurt thinks that about every DMN thing that happens in the world. Rogan's own take, while critical, was far more grounded, if still harsh. He thinks De Niro simply has a severe case of Trump derangement syndrome compounded by age. Rogan suggested there's a thing about old men wanting to yell at everybody, and that De Niro is just old and cranky, his vision of the world blurring both literally and figuratively. He pointed to De Niro's bizarre appearance outside the trial as evidence of this declining grasp on reality, wondering who in their right mind told him that was a good idea. So, while the dark rumor about lists and fear was introduced, Rogan quickly pivoted to his more psychological, age-related explanation. Still, the fact that such a rumor was even voiced on a massive platform like Rogan's podcast adds a layer of unsettling intrigue to De Niro's increasingly erratic public behavior. It plants a seed of doubt and speculation that goes far beyond simple political disagreement, touching on potentially hidden, shocking motivations.
So Robert De Niro, who's got a severe case of the TDS, is in conference right now, as all of the muckety-mucks are. And he's very unhappy about what Trump is doing to try to keep filmmaking, American filmmaking, in America by slapping tariffs on foreign-made films so that he can basically try to force people to make them domestically again for the American audience that they're meant to serve. And here's what De Niro said on Tuesday.
America's Philistine president has had himself appointed head of one of our premier cultural institutions.
Meanwhile, from a completely different corner of the media landscape came Megyn Kelly. Where Rogan's style is conversational and laced with humor, Kelly's is sharp, precise, and often carries the weight of someone who has completely run out of patience for certain types of celebrity behavior. Like Rogan, Kelly also tackled the topic of Hollywood figures wading into politics, confusing award show podiums for political platforms. And she also didn't explicitly name De Niro, but her description, a Hollywood loudmouth, who mistakes the Oscars for Capitol Hill, left little to the imagination. Kelly's focus wasn't on the psychological aspect of aging or potential concussions. Her focus was on the hypocrisy and the dangerous detachment from reality. She zeroed in on the idea that certain celebrities treat award stages like campaign rallies, where they get standing ovations for their names, not their logic, and without the burden of actually understanding policy or running for anything. They want the glory of being a political thought leader without the effort of understanding a single bill or the real-world consequences of policy decisions. Kelly pointed out the sheer absurdity of millionaires who live in gated mansions, guarded by private security, lecturing the public about justice or hardship from a podium shaped like an Oscar statue, then going home in cars more expensive than the average home. It's a feedback loop of nonsense, a glamorous Groundhog Day where the same empty speeches get delivered to the same clapping audiences in their echo chambers. Kelly's critique is less amused and more scathing, seeing it as not just cringe, but potentially dangerous when influential figures posture as moral authorities while being completely detached from the lives of average people. Her commentary is a cold, precise dissection of the self-importance and lack of authenticity that she sees pervading this type of celebrity political activism. She pulls back the velvet curtain on the idea that these actors, who spend hours in makeup chairs being told they're geniuses, are somehow in touch with the public pulse. At some point, the costume has to come off, she implies, and what's left is just a person who once played a boxer now punching the air about political villains, completely missing the mark.
And then he starts yelling at regular people. He's like, fuck you, you're a gangster. Go fuck you.
Like, it's crazy that that's the guy from Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
You know what also I think those guys have no friends. I think the only friends they have are Hollywood phonies. And so you're in this weird world where everybody you talk to is a phony, and you become a phony, and everyone's a phony, and your grasp on reality is very slippery, and your eyes are going, right? Mm-hmm. So your vision of the world, your actual vision of the world, your ability to read a phone. You ever see old people's text messages?
So here you have it. Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly, two people who likely disagree on almost everything else. Politics, culture, maybe even pizza toppings, arriving at remarkably similar conclusions about a certain type of celebrity behavior, personified lately by Robert De Niro. Rogan sees the circus and laughs, pointing out the delusion with a mix of bemusement and blunt analogies. Kelly sees the hypocrisy and detachment, dissecting it with the precision of a surgeon holding a grudge, highlighting the danger of influential people who mistake fame for wisdom. One is a former MMA commentator turned podcast king who probably thinks a salad is a conspiracy. The other is a high-powered media veteran who can eviscerate bad logic faster than a courtroom objection. They didn't coordinate. They didn't tag team. They simply observed the same spectacle and, from their vastly different perspectives, saw the same core truth. The performance wasn't landing. The message wasn't sticking. The audience, the wider non-Hollywood audience at least, wasn't buying it. What makes their separate critiques so effective is precisely this lack of coordination. It suggests the problem is so obvious, so glaring, that it doesn't take a conspiracy or a planned attack to point it out. It just takes eyesight and a working microphone.
Make of that.
Well, it's a global problem because it's the greediness of these studios and some of these actors that, make a lot more money overseas than they would here. But I look at the film industry in the United States, and my father worked in the film industry in Boston. He was a transportation coordinator for the Teamsters Union, so I know a little bit about it. I look at the film industry as we have some of the most creative people in the world.
But this isn't just about one actor. This moment, this dual, indirect takedown, feels like a cultural eye roll, a symptom of a larger fatigue with celebrity culture. For decades, we've watched actors stand at podiums and speak as if their IMDb pages came with built-in moral clarity, as if playing a war hero or a crusading lawyer automatically granted them geopolitical wisdom. People are tired of lectures from those who travel by private jet and think hashtags are diplomacy. They're exhausted by millionaires shouting about political villains while living lives utterly divorced from the struggles of the average voter. The truth is, most folks would rather hear a thoughtful insight from someone they trust, someone grounded in their reality, than another $1 million monologue from someone who thinks relatable means not having a second yacht. The man who once muttered iconic tough guy lines now looks like he's reading tweets in all caps and calling it political activism. It's like watching a great chef suddenly throw Kraft singles on filet mignon and insist it's gourmet. And if there's anything Rogan and Kelly agree on, albeit silently from their own professional mountaintops, it's that the public deserves better than a millionaire meltdown in tuxedo form. There's something inherently pathetic about watching someone with that much access and influence choose to squander it on theatrical outrage while convincing themselves they're making a difference.
Why is he talking about this? Why is he talking about this publicly?
I'm going to say one thing. Trump.
If you're going to come out and say that you have a really deep-seated hatred for one of the two people running for president, you can't just be, he's a bully, he's a piece of shit, I hate him.
He's an idiot. Colin Powell said it best. He's a national disaster. He's an embarrassment to this country. It makes me so angry that this country has gotten to this point, that this fool, this bozo, has wound up where he has.
You probably, if you're going to express yourself about it and alienate 50% of the country, which it seems like it is, you're going to have to do better than that.
The real difference makers aren't the ones who treat award shows like campaign stops or yell at the void and pretend the echo is applause. They're the people who understand that influence without insight is just noise. And lately, De Niro's speeches have been less the voice of a generation and more like an angry uncle you have to mute at Thanksgiving. He's become the celebrity version of someone yelling at pigeons in the park. Loud, theatrical, and somehow still believing he's the voice of reason. Meanwhile, Rogan's listeners are cracking up over his vivid analogies about Hollywood political cosplay, and Kelly's audience is nodding along with her righteous fury about out-of-touch millionaires playing dress-up as revolutionaries. And both groups walk away with the same thought. Just because you start in Raging Bull doesn't mean you're qualified to lead the next one.
What about the garbage outside today? Robert De Niro, officially sent by the Biden campaign, makes himself look like an idiot and reminds us why Trump is so popular.
It's so stupid. It was colossally stupid. If you're going to send somebody to go speak outside of the Trump trial, make it someone who's universally beloved, like a Michelle Obama. You know, she's not universally loved. She's not loved on the right. But I'm saying, like, at least within the left and the center left, and maybe even some center righties. Robert De Niro has gone so hard partisan over the past 8 years. He is like example number one of Trump derangement syndrome.
The most brutal part of all this? Robert De Niro doesn't seem to realize it. Because the nature of these indirect roasts, these observational takedowns, is that they aren't designed to provoke a response from him. They're designed to highlight the absurdity so clearly that a response becomes unnecessary, even redundant. Rogan didn't need De Niro to call in and argue. Kelly didn't invite him on her show to debate. They simply laid out the evidence, like two separate prosecutors who stumbled upon the same crime scene and started roasting the forensics team, while the suspect stood nearby, oblivious, still performing. De Niro's whole political shtick has gone from dramatic to unintentionally comedic without him noticing. And nothing proves that faster than being separately roasted by two media personalities who have zero reason to agree, unless the material is just that ripe for criticism. He's not being taken seriously by his critics anymore. He's being viewed as an example, a case study in how fame doesn't equal wisdom, how detachment breeds ridicule. He's the punchline everyone saw coming long before he stepped up to the mic outside that courtroom. He's still backstage, rehearsing for a performance no one asked for, delivering lines to an audience that left at intermission or is only watching now for the comedy, not the message.
Robert De Niro, there's something about being a star where you think your opinion's more important than anybody else's, and you can go give a press conference, and he obviously has been very vocal from 2016 that he hates Trump for whatever reason. Maybe they have some personal thing.
You think Trump ever threw a punch himself or took one? This guy who ran and hid in the White House bunker when there were protesters outside? No way.
Now he's like holding press conferences. Now everyone's heckling him everywhere he goes.
That's so bad.
Like instead of just being this cranky old liberal, now you're this guy that is yelling at other people that are Trump supporters, and they're yelling at you. Like you've opened yourself up to this nonsense. Like, why?
So, if there's a lesson here, it's simple, and it applies far beyond one legendary actor. If you want to be taken seriously, maybe don't treat your Oscar speech like a Senate hearing. And if you find yourself being roasted from two entirely different ends of the media spectrum by people who agree on almost nothing else, maybe, just maybe, it's time to rethink your role. because in the end, the most impactful performance wasn't in the movies, or on the awards stage, or even outside the courtroom. It was the quiet, creeping realization that somewhere along the way, a legend became less of a statesman and more of a walking punchline in a suit, starring in a roast he didn't even know was happening. And oh, what a show it has become.